Rahim. Every man among the people of the Garden of Paradise has access to the benefits provided by a tree called the Tree of Bliss, Tuba. Whenever one of them wishes to dress himself up in clothes of extremely high quality, he has only to make his way to the Tree of Bliss, the spathes or envelopes of which will at once be opened for him. These wardrobes are of 6 different kinds, each one of them containing 70 types of clothing. No article of clothing has the same color as any other, nor is any garment tailored from the same fabric as another. He may therefore take his pick, selecting whichever of these items he wishes to wear. The following message is inscribed on the wives of the people of the Garden of Paradise, on the area between the throat and the breast of every woman amongst them. You are my dearly beloved, and I am your dearly beloved. There is no one who could ever be a match for you, and no one who could ever take your place. For you, there is no malice or deceit within my heart. The man will therefore stare at the area between his wife's throat and breast, and he will see right through to the innermost core of her being, beyond her flesh and bones. For his innermost core is a mirror to her, and her innermost core is a mirror to him. This penetration will not do her any damage, however, except in the sense that the sapphire is damaged by having a string threaded through it. The whiteness of these ladies is like the whiteness of coral pearls, and their pure clarity is like the pure clarity of sapphires. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, it is as if they were sapphires and coral pearls. When the people of the Garden of Paradise go riding, their mounts will be fine she camels and plain workhorses. The hoof of one of these she camels will make contact with the ground at the furthest point within its range of vision. In the case of that plain workhorse, the touchdown point for its hoof will also be at the furthest spot within its range of sight. These animals have been created from pearls and sapphires. The magnitude of every riding beast among them is 70 miles, from nose to tail. The reins and bridles of the fine she camels and also those of the plain workhorses are cords of pearls and crystallite or peridot. Concerning the words of Allah in which He has given us the following description of the people of the Garden of Paradise. Allah has therefore warded off from them the evil of that day, and He has made them find cheerfulness and joy, and He has granted them as a reward for all that they endured the Garden of Paradise and silk attire, reclining therein upon couches. They will experience there neither the fierce heat of a sun nor bitter cold, and close upon them is the shade thereof, while its clustered fruits bow down low, and goblets of silver are brought around for them, and vessels as clear as crystal, crystal clear vessels made of silver, which they have measured exactly to the measure of their own deeds. And in it their thirst is quenched with a cup of the mixture of which is zanjabil, ginger, a fountain therein named Salsabil, and waiting on them are immortal youths, whom, if you could see them, you would take for scattered pearls. And when you see there, you will see a state of bliss and a high estate. Their raiment will be fine green silk and gold brocade. They will be adorned with bracelets of silver. Their Lord will slake their thirst with a pure drink, and it will be said to them, behold, this is a reward for you. Your endeavour upon earth has found acceptance. As for his words, Almighty and glorious is He. Allah has therefore warded off from them the evil of that day. What He means is that on the day of resurrection, He will spare them from having to experience the awful intensity of the reckoning, the Hisab, and the dread terror of hell, Jahannam. As we know from traditional accounts attributed to the Prophet and transmitted on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, when hell is brought forth among the parade grounds of the resurrection, it will be led there by 19 keepers from among the angels. Each and every one of those keepers will be accompanied by 70,000 other angels serving as his assistants, all of them rough, stern, their teeth grimly gritted, their eyes like live coals, and their colours like the flames of fire, while their nostrils give vent to lofty columns of flame and smoke. They stand at the ready, prepared at all times to receive and carry out the command of the all compelling one, Al Jabbar. Each keeper and his assistants will thus drag hell along by means of a shackle and an enormous chain, sometimes walking to the right of it, sometimes to the left of it, sometimes following up behind it. Each and every angel amongst them will hold in his hand a grappling hook made of iron. They will shout and bellow as they goad hell along. But its slow progress will be made to the accompaniment of moaning and sighing, staggering and stumbling, clouds of gloom and smoke, rattling and clanking noises, and a towering inferno, stoked by the fury of its rage against its own inhabitants. Thus, they will eventually install it in a position midway between the Garden of Paradise and the place where the resurrected creatures are kept standing, the Al Mawqif. At this point, hell will lift its gaze. As soon as it spies the creatures assembled there, it will bolt towards them in order to devour them. Its keepers will have to pull on its chains to hold it in check, for it for if it were left to its own devices, it would pounce upon every believer and unbeliever without distinction. Once it sees it has been effectively restrained from attacking the assembled throng of creatures, it will simmer and boil with an intensity that can hardly be distinguished from the most furious kind of rage. Then it will heave another sigh, and the resurrected creatures will hear the sound of gnashing of its teeth. They will cause their hearts to shudder and tremble with alarm. They will fly into a state of panic. Their eyes will glaze over and their hearts will end up in their throats. Then hell will heave a deep sigh, which will so affect those who hear it that not a single one of them will fail to sink down on his knees. Not one angel brought near to the Lord, not one prophet sent as a messenger, and not one of those resurrected creatures who are present at the place of standing. Then hell will heave a second deep sigh, and not a single eye that still has a drop of moisture in it will fade to shed a tear. Then hell will heave a third deep sigh, and even if those who hear that sigh, be they human beings or jinn, were each endowed with the merit of 72 prophets, they would surely suppose that they must be embracing her as a man embraces a woman, and that they could not possibly escape from her embrace. Then hell will heave a fourth deep sigh, and nothing that is capable of speech will fail to have its speech arrested. The only exceptions will be Jibrail, Mikael, and Ibrahim, the bosom friend of the Almighty, All Merciful One, each one of whom will say as they cling to the heavenly throne, my own soul, Nafsi, Nafsi, that is all I beg you to spare. Then hell will send forth a shower of sparks as numerous as the stars. Each spark will be like an enormous cloud arising in the west, and that shower of sparks will fall upon the heads of the assembled creatures. This then is the shower of sparks which Allah will ward off from the true believers, who faithfully discharge their solemn vow and who are in dread of His chastisement, fearing that it might be inflicted upon them. For Allah will surely protect all those who are committed to the affirmation of His oneness and to faith, as He will protect all those who remain faithful to the example set by His messenger. Ahlus Sunnah, from the evil shar of that day. He will cause them to experience His mercy. He will make their final reckoning easy for them to undergo. He will cause them to enter His garden of paradise, and He will grant them everlasting life therein for all eternity through His loving grace. As for the unbelievers, on the other hand, and those who are guilty of attributing partners to Him and of worshipping idols, He will cause them to suffer evil upon evil, fear upon fear, and torment upon torment. For He will cause them to enter hell, and He will make them live therein forever, for all eternity. Then He has told us, and He has made them find cheerfulness and joy. Cheerfulness, nadra, shows in people's faces, while joy, surur, is felt within their hearts. What is alluded to here is the following experience. As soon as the true believer has emerged from his grave or tomb on the day of resurrection, he will look straight ahead of himself. There, lo and behold, he will see a human being whose face is like the sun and who is laughing merrily. This person will be dressed in white robes, and on his head there will be a crown. The newly resurrected believer will gaze at the unusual individual until the latter draws near to him and says, Assalamu alaikum, O saintly friend of Allah, who will respond to this greeting by saying, and you be peace, and upon you be peace. Who are you, O servant of Allah? Are you one of the angels? To this the other will reply, No. By Allah, the following questions and answers will then be exchanged between the pair. Are you one of the prophets? No, by Allah. Are you one of those drawn near to the Lord? No, by Allah. Well, then, who are you? I am your own righteous conduct. I have come to greet you with the good news of your admission to the garden of paradise and salvation from the fire of hell. O servant of Allah, do you really know that for a fact, so that you can confidently give me such glad tidings? Yes. Once this assurance has been given, the conversation will continue as follows. Well, then, what do you want from me? Climb up on my shoulders and use me as your means of transport. Subhanallah, it cannot be right and proper for the likes of you to be ridden as a means of transport. Oh, yes, it is entirely appropriate considering how long I rode about on your shoulders in the realm of the lower world. So now I am begging you, for the sake of Allah Ta'ala's countenance, to mount up and ride upon me. The newly resurrected believer will thereupon agree to mount and ride upon the embodiment of his own righteous conduct, at which point the latter will say to him, Do not be afraid, I shall be your escort to the garden of paradise. This will make him feel happy, and his happiness will become apparent in his face, so much so that it will soon be glistening and sparkling with delight. Radiant light, nur, will be visible in his face, while joy, surur, is felt within his heart. For this is in accordance with the words of Allah, and He has made them find cheerfulness and joy. As far as the unbeliever is concerned, As soon as he has emerged from his grave or tomb, he will also look straight ahead of himself. There, lo and behold, he will see a swarthy, blue eyed man with an ugly face, swarthier than the pitch blackness of the tomb on a dark and gloomy night. The man will be dressed in black robes. His canine teeth will scratch the ground, and as he treads upon it, his footsteps will produce a rumbling noise like thunder. The stench he gives off will be worse than that of a rotting corpse. The unbeliever, though wishing he could turn his face away from him, will say, "Who are you, O servant of Allah?" To this the ugly figure will reply, "O enemy of Allah, come here to me. Come here to me. You belong to me, and I belong to you this day." The following exchanges will then take place. "Woe unto you! Are you a devil? Are you shaitan? No, by Allah, I am your own wicked conduct." "Well, then, what do you want from me?" "I propose to mount upon your shoulders and use you as my means of transport. I implore you by Allah to grant me a bit of leeway here, since you would be exposing me to disgrace in the sight of all my fellow creatures." "By Allah, there is no way out of your predicament, considering how long you wrote about on me in the lower world. So today I am going to mount up and ride upon you." The embodiment of this wicked conduct will therefore proceed to use the newly resurrected unbeliever as his means of transport. For this is in accordance with the words of Allah, "And they shall be carrying their burdens on their backs. Oh, how evil are the loads they have to bear." Then Allah has made mention of His saintly friends. He has told us, and He has granted them as a reward. That is to say, in addition to the good tidings of cheerfulness and joy for all that they have endured, that is to say, for their patient endurance in the face of trials and tribulations, in the performance of commandments and the avoidance of prohibitions, and in submissive acceptance of the decree of destiny, a garden of paradise and silk attire. As far as the garden of paradise is concerned, they will lead a life of ease and comfort therein. As for the silk, they will use it as the material for the clothes they wear. Next, Allah has told us they will be reclining therein, that is to say, in the garden of paradise, upon raised and canopied couches, that is to say, upon raised couches, surur with canopies, hijal, i.e., curtains, sutur, draped over them. They will experience there neither a sun nor bitter cold. That is to say, they will not be afflicted by heat of sun, nor by the bitter cold of severe frost, because there is neither winter nor summer in the garden of paradise. Allah has told us, "And close upon them is the shade thereof, while its clustered fruits bow down low." That is to say, the shade of the trees is close upon them. What is alluded to here is in the following state of affairs. The inhabitants of the garden of paradise may eat of its fruit while they are standing up, if they so wish, or while they are sitting down, if they so wish, or even, if they so wish, while they are sleeping. Whenever they want to enjoy some fruit, the clusters will bow down close enough to them for one of them to stand up and take his pick. Such is the explanation of his words, "while its cluster fruits bow down low." Then he has told us, "And flasks of silver are brought around for them, and vessels." These vessels are actually mugs or tankards, except that they have round tops. They are not equipped with handles. He has also said, "These vessels are crystal beakers made of silver." In other words, the vessels concerned are of the type called qawarir, beakers normally made of crystal in the sense of clear, colorless glass of the highest quality, but in this case they are made of silver. The explanation of the seeming paradox is simply this: whereas the qawarir of this lower world are made of earthly material, the qawarir of the garden of paradise are made of silver. Allah has then added these words to His description of the vessels. They have measured them in exact proportion. That is to say, the vessels have been measured to match the proportions of the flask, and the flask has been measured to fit in the palm of the servant in charge of dispensing the people's drink. This has been done to ensure that exactly the right amount is always poured. Not a drop will be left in the flask, and not a drop too much will be poured, since all the elements involved have been measured to correspond exactly. Such is the import of his words. They have measured them in exact proportion. He has told us, and in it their thirst is quenched with a cup. That is to say, their thirst is quenched with a cup of wine, khamr, since no receptacle that does not contain wine can be called a cup. He has also told us the mixture of it is ginger. That is to say, the whole of it has had ginger mixed in with it. Then Allah says, a fountain therein named Salsabil. This fountain flows towards them from the Garden of Eden, for it passes through every garden, then returns to its source. It touches every part of the Garden of Paradise. He has also told us, and waiting on them are immortal youths. These youths are the attendants who will never become white haired with age, since they have been granted immortal youth. They will never attain the age of puberty, let alone grow old. Speaking of these ever youthful attendants, Allah Ta'ala says, if you could see them, you would take for them scattered pearls. That is to say, they would seem like pearls on account of their handsome appearance and the whiteness of their complexion, and like scattered pearls on account of their great number. In other words, they would seem like scattered pearls, too numerous for anyone to count them all. Then Allah told us, and when you see there, that is to say, over in the Garden of Paradise, you will see a state of bliss and a vast estate. What this signifies in detail is as follows. Any man who is numbered among the inhabitants of the Garden of Paradise will be the owner of a palace. Within that palace, there will be 70 palatial mansions. Inside every mansion, there will be 70 apartments. Every apartment will be constructed from a hollowed pearl, the height of which extends skyward to the distance of a league, farsakh, while its width and length are of league by league. It will be equipped with 4,000 door panels made of gold. Inside that apartment, there will be a throne like raised couch embroidered with threads and sapphire on the right and the left, respectively. There will also be 4,000 footstools made of gold with supporting legs of red ruby. That throne like raised couch will have 70 cushions spread upon its surface, every cushion of a different color. The owner will be reclining there on his left side, clad in 70 articles of clothing, tailored from silk brocade. The garment closest to his body will be made of white silk, and on his forehead he will wear a diadem, iklil, embedded with crystallite or peridot, sapphires, and various kinds of jewels, every jewel being of a different color. Upon his head he will wear a crown of gold with 70 corners to it, and on every corner a pearl as wide as the entire distance between the east and the west. On his wrist he will carry 3 bracelets, a bracelet of gold, a bracelet of silver, and a bracelet of pearl. On his fingers and toes he will be wearing rings of gold and silver, studded with various kinds of precious stones. On duty in his presence there will be 10,000 ever youthful attendants who will never reach adulthood, let alone become white-haired with age. Inshallah, we'll continue on with this maybe tomorrow, inshallah, at the same time. For now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.